You have to give like a little, we're on in 5, 4.
It's recording now, right?
I think so.
And we're on.
That always makes me think of Aaron.
No, dude, that's Wayne's World.
Yeah, I know, but
Ah,
it's two different.
hold. Guys, you're nodding.
Let's start. I want to get the
Go,
fuck out
so
of this.
go, man. We're waiting for
started.
you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
Come on, technical guy.
Oh, dude.
Don't answer. Who is it?
You guys can start. CrossFit Soul.
Who was it?
Who was it, dude?
It's one of those things.
They're calling from the internet? One of the reasons why we want to start doing these videos is to educate everyone on the beginning of our new training phases. We've been putting out a blog that's had a lot of content over the past several years, and the beginning of a training phase, we do a pretty solid job at writing a blog post and a description, educating everyone about what they can expect for our new training phase. We always like to have an intention behind what we do. We want to start adding a second layer, and that's going to be a video. We're about to start phase 4 for our training year, and we're looking at this phase as kind of like our preseason to the actual competition year. It's a little bit too early to be doing so many full efforts and a lot of full sport of fitness style competition training sessions, but we are getting close. Most recently, we have a lot of new online qualifiers starting, so a lot of the work that's going to be put into the phase 4 of this training year is going to be in preparation for much of that. The biggest thing everyone can expect is we're going to be doing more mixed or full sport of fitness style workouts. This whole year, for the most part, we have not been doing double mixed sessions a day, but we're going to start to see a little bit more of that. We're going to start to see some open testers. We are going to repeat some previous online qualifiers, some previous large event training sessions. We'll see a lot of that in our mixed work. Lou, you want to start talking about weightlifting and what everyone can expect to see there?
As we get closer into the preseason, we're going to start moving away from some of the volume we've been doing. We're still keeping a high frequency approach, so you guys are lifting still 4 to 5 days a week. You're doing weightlifting movements, but some of the volume we've been doing, some of the triples, as we work up to daily minimums and heavy singles now start to come out and be replaced with more volume in mixed work and more volume in your battery pieces. As far as the weightlifting goes, we are going to be continuing with our daily minimums. So I do want to address that. As we get into the online qualifier season and more competitions start coming up, we're starting to see a lot more workouts or scores based around a heavy single with limited attempts to hit those. So you'll have 3 attempts to hit a heavy snatch or a heavy clean and jerk. Our daily minimums are designed to make those sort of events easier on you. Your daily minimum should be a number that you can hit every single day. If you're missing your daily minimum, and even some of our guys in-house are guilty of this, it's too heavy. You got to bring that number down. The goal with those is to develop consistency with a heavy-ish weight for you, and develop a confidence going into those events, knowing that at worst case scenario, you can always hit that number. Whether it's your 88% or 90 or 93, whatever it is, it needs to be something you can hit every single week. If you're missing daily minimums, you're missing the goal, the weight's too high, go back down, lower it, make it more consistent. As far as accessory work goes and squatting, we're adding in another squat day. So the last phase we were doing some deadlifting work on its own. Deadlifts will now move into mixed pieces, and we're going to replace that with a squat day. Squats will follow along with everything else we've been talking about. Volume comes down a little bit, weights become heavier, you have some rep maxes this upcoming phase, and you have some more strength work in 85-ish% range and moving upwards towards that end phase. To go along with that, we do have some more assistance work as well. So you guys will be doing more single leg stuff, more posterior chain assistance work to replace some of the stimulus we're losing with moving the deadlift work out. The other thing we're changing is we are adding in a second battery piece now. So as we get closer to our season, we will do more battery work, and this is the first phase of the year where we start to do 2 of those a week. So you want to talk a little bit about that? We're splitting
Yeah.
them up every week, so we're not. They're focusing on something different.
Right.
They're rotating on a week-to-week basis.
So the challenge has always been where for us to place the battery sessions, especially when we start to do both snatch and clean and jerk. Traditionally, we start with one, and it's been one snatch session a week, or sometimes one every 2 weeks. And it's pretty easy to place that. When we have 2, it's tough, especially this time of year, because the priority becomes doing overall more mixed pieces. And all the focus can't just be put into weightlifting, because we're not weightlifters. These guys are CrossFitters. So that's been a challenge. And what we're able to do now is we're actually going to be, it's similar-ish to last phase, but with more mixed priority, and I'll explain what that means. So we're working up to daily minimums, and we're going to use percentages of those daily minimums and sometimes complexes in our mixed pieces. So on 1 week, we'll do something, we're gonna be alternating. So let's say week 1 will be snatch battery work. Week 2, instead of snatch battery, we're gonna focus more on overhead squat proficiency, but in the same kind of battery structure.
Still based off your daily minimum from the snatch, right?
Yeah.
So they're still hitting a daily minimum in the snatch before they move into this. And then for clean and jerk, we're gonna do the same thing, with week 1 focusing more on clean, and week 2 focusing more on jerk,
Correct.
right? Yeah, and that's important because from the couple of years we've been doing this, those clean battery pieces tend to demolish people. Those
Yeah.
seem to be the hardest.
The hardest battery pieces, or the hardest, honestly, I think that's some of the hardest conditioning efforts that we feature in our program design, where it's hard for people to recover from. So that's why it's been a challenge to design where we place them in like the grand scheme of things. For those of you guys who might be new to our philosophy and how we define battery work, so understanding weightlifting is very easy. Not always, but for the most part, it's designed around increasing our strongest efforts in the snatch and the clean and jerk. Again, weightlifting, we mean weightlifting. We don't mean deadlift, squats, and front squats and other accessories.
Snatch and clean.
Yeah, we mean snatch and clean jerk. When we talk about weightlifting, we're just only talking about snatch and clean and jerk. And the overall intention behind that is to increase the 1 rep max for both of them. Battery work is different. Battery work is more about increasing efficiency, and increasing efficiency at those 80, 85, 90%. It's great if you can snatch 160 kilos, but what we really want to see in the sport of fitness is how many times you can snatch your 90%, and then to further that, how many times you can snatch your 90% in a mixed setting with whatever.
It's
double
repeatability.
unders. Yes, burpees, bar muscle ups, handstand walking, bike repeats, whatever it is. We want to see how close you can get to that threshold in that mixed setting.
You guys that have been following the blog will see the importance of this stuff paying off. I mean, we're seeing it now with the Wodapalooza qualifiers. First one is 7 minutes of squat, clean and jerk.
Yeah.
We've been doing EMOM work for 12 weeks now.
8 to 12 weeks.
8 to 12 weeks with the clean and jerk. We've been doing these progressing battery pieces with the clean and jerk. So if you've been following the blog, you can see where that stuff starts to play off now when we get into season.
Right. Something else that we're going to start doing in our battery pieces, which we have not done a lot of this year, is we're going to start to see a lot more 2 rep max, 3 rep max, 4 rep max, 5 rep max, touch and go from different positions. And the whole concept behind that, behind developing a lot of confidence in the lift, is so you guys know what you can lean on, know what you have in the tank. It's like the whole concept is to develop as many tools as possible. And when I'm working with someone, when any of us are working with someone, it's the conversations we want to have when preparing for the open or a big event is, what's your 3 rep max, touch and go snatch. It's important to know those things because events these days don't really allow us to express our true strength and say, let's see your 1 rep max snatch or clean and jerk with plenty of rest. It'll come in the way of a complex or a limited time to perform X amount of reps or a ladder or whatever.
Max out at the end of the mixed piece.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Weird complexes. I mean, Wodapalooza had the Bear complex last year. So
And they had a 3 rep max hang snatch the year before.
Before
Right?
and after
Yeah.
last year, right? There was some snatch.
But
work
last
snatch.
year and the year before they had a 3 rep max
Right,
as well.
right. There was also, what was it? Was it 2 years ago? The team test was shoulder to overhead, 1, 2, and 3 rep max or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang power clean.
One had a snatch, the
Squats
other one
and
had a
jerks.
jerk.
Yeah.
The other one had a.
So, that's it as far as that goes. Sean, you want to come out and talk a little about
Gymnastics.
the idea behind our gymnastics in this phase?
So with gymnastics, again, we saw this in the other phase where we still kept up with high frequency, so we have been building up. There's always going to be maintenance for strict work, so what I have been putting is a lot of complexes. So same thing with the weightlifting. You'll see muscle up complexes, ring complexes, and where you're keeping a lot of time under tension and building up strength through there. So you'll see a lot of working on transitions when you get to that pull. So that way, when they are adding it more into their sport specific, they're a lot stronger there. They know basically where they are as far as if they get stuck in a transition, how to kind of muscle through that.
So the overall concept behind our entire phase in all of our different segments is we're going to start to see more aerobic work and more mixed work mixed into everything. Like we just said about the battery, it's great that you are very efficient at your 90%, right? Or it's great that you can snatch 150 kilos or whatever that may be. But, you know, just like muscle ups, Sean's a great example of this. It's great that you have a very competitive 30 muscle up for time score, but what we want to see is you do 10 muscle ups, 10 snatches, 10 muscle ups, 10 snatches, 10 muscle ups, 10 snatches. How repeatable you are at those big efforts. So instead of just continuing to independently segment and develop our gymnastics proficiency, this time of year slowly start to increase some more, you know, give you opportunities to perform them under fatigue.
So in the last phase, we had some threshold rowing work. It was typically low calorie on some sort of short time domain and really high intensity work. So we're basically mixing that in now with some mixed gymnastics. So you'll see like a buy-in of maybe like bar muscle ups or handstand walks into a high intensity rowing piece, or vice versa, like an all out effort sprint into another sort of gymnastics piece, or a repeatability thing where you're working on a strict movement and just coming back to the rower. Usually in the CrossFit Open, we've seen that where you have to either keep going back to the rower, it's like one set of 8 calorie work, and just getting very familiar as to what you can do in a specific time domain, so that come competition or something like that, or a qualifier, you know where you're at and where to moderate your intensity.
Mixed work, it's up there, Chief.
Mixed work? I don't
Yeah.
think there's no. Well, let me start with the bike stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So, last
Right.
phase we had 2 standalone bike pieces, 2 standalone rowing pieces. Each of them, they were both going the same direction. It was one more aerobic, one a little bit more anaerobic, same thing for both. So we're going to take a bike piece, continue building off of the anaerobic work from phase 2, but the other bike day will now be dedicated into mixed work, correct? And this mixed work will now start looking more like the stuff that's coming up during season. So, former online qualifier workouts, current online qualifier workouts. We got some benchmarks lined up.
A lot.
Okay, so more sport fitness, sport-specific style combinations.
We're going to be mixing benchmarks as well, so taking certain pieces from, you know, some of your popular benchmarks like a Grace and a Jackie, or a Grace and a Karen, and looking at, I think, look at this most recent Wadapalooza qualifier workout, doing heavier versions of those benchmark workouts
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Anything else on that?
Oh, on top of that, we'll still have a track day as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
There will be a track day, so that'll kind of continue with building your anaerobic work
Yeah.
as well, because they're going to be shorter sprint-style track
Built off
workouts,
the 800 work.
as well as a little bit more recommendation to what types of warm-ups to do. So beyond developing anaerobic work, it's also going to increase overall athleticism.
When we're considering our track design, I think it could go either way as far as when we're like looking at program design for track workouts, what the overall focus of like the energy system is.
Right.
My biggest thing with the track is that it gives these guys a chance to go outside of the gym,
Right.
to train somewhere else, to move through different planes.
Right.
The
Especially
sport
in
of-
the warm-ups.
Yeah, especially in
That's where it
warm-ups. In CrossFit, we tend to move in very similar planes and repeat the same kind of movement patterns.
Right.
And while all that's great about, you know, the quality of their track work, I do think that is important, but what I like is getting
Yeah.
these folks
It's
outside.
nice to just get outside for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
So,
Spend so much time indoors in the gym. It's good for them to go out. It's fun.
Right, and that brings us into what our accessory or our assistance work will look like as well. Since we're going to be doing a lot of the single leg, single arm stuff within the squatting, pulling, or the weightlifting with the assistants, I guess assistants in there, our accessories at the end of a session will be more about trunk flexion, extension, and rotational work as well to get those other planes of motion.
We also have our awkward object day
Yeah.
on same day as the track. Again, it's more about doing things that we don't normally see in CrossFit. Hard lesson learned from last year.
Yeah.
Nothing but sandbags and dumbbells. So we're going to see a lot more of that. There, we're going to need some patience, right? Because not everybody has the same strongman-ish gear at their gym. So we will provide alternative means to doing it. So for instance, the yoke carry, but you can still do a barbell carry. We might write it as a sandbag clean. We don't have heavy sandbags. Hey, I've got D-balls, I've got stones. But again, it's about getting out of the typical environment, which is another thing we'll do in our flow sessions, right? So maybe
Yeah.
we should touch on that next. We'll be moving in ways, again, that we don't normally move across, crawling, more rotational movements, more static movements. Not necessarily using this as our recovery day, right? Because we're actually going to recover on our recovery days, but just have some lower intensity work where we're getting good blood flow.
I want to echo what he's saying about the odd object training that we've been doing more of, and we're going to continue seeing even more of it. I want to go away from us calling that strongman
Yeah.
stuff, because it's not. And we don't. I know that like typically gets thrown around a lot in our sport, but it's not strongman, and we don't do very much strongman at all. The one parallel is that we move sandbags and heavy objects, and we're carrying them and whatever. But it's a very different sport and a very different style of training. So what he was talking about on a lot of our flow sessions, the structure will look similar-ish, except the number one focus will be recovery work and moving ourselves through different ranges of motion and movement planes that we normally don't do in the rest of our training. Very simple and very straightforward. The recovery aspect is that it's done at a recovery and slow pace. That's really it.
It's actually the spot where our lower stroke rate rowing is being
Gets mixed into as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's being moved into those sessions.
You know, once again, for those of you guys that are new to our blog or our training philosophy, we put out a primary and secondary program design every day. For those of you guys who need to prioritize your training, we try to do that for you. If you have a limited time window, don't have a large, you don't have the time commitment to do both, that's fine. It's our belief that you can just follow our primary segment and get enough training and become very fit and work on all of your weaknesses just by doing that. The days you have more time, we recommend that you do both if you can. So again, if you're new to it, you're trying to decipher what to do, and oh shit, this is so much work, I need to prioritize my time. It is a lot of stuff. Our whole blog is written around and geared towards regional and regional bubble potential style athletes and above. So just consider that when following some of this stuff. We do our best to write certain scale downs and other options for people because we realize that is the reality of many of the people following our design, but don't get it twisted, don't get confused. That is definitely who it's designed around. Thanks for watching this video. You can post any comments or send us an email. Come by, whatever you guys want. Thank you.